So good morning, Alister, and thank you so much for taking this time to join this interview. It's truly an honor to have you here, and I'm excited to hear your insights on rewilding. I think our many Chinese audiences also wanted to hear, and also sustainability leadership and the broader challenges and opportunities in nature conservation or biodiversity conservation. And to start, could you please briefly introduce yourself? I believe our Chinese audiences would love to hear about your career journey and what inspired you to enter the field of nature conservation.
Well, thank you, Nan. It's a huge honor being here with you. You're such a bright spark, and it just astonishes me, like that you come from China, you speak such good English, you're studying at one of the world's top universities, and here you are also running a podcast. It's just amazing. So, big respect to you. So, I'm I am I live in England. I hesitate because it's quite hard to describe. For some people, it's just very clear where they come from and their history. But for me, like I feel like a world citizen. I was born in Brunei. My father was in the British Army. We lived in Canada for a year, Germany for 4 years, and then we moved to Ireland at the end of the sort of the conflict in Ireland. So I had that history, that experience of kind of being an outsider in quite a lot of different places, and and then going to school. So going from an English school to going to a school in the west of Ireland, which is quite a remote place, and a couple of things happened really. One was I had done a lot of sailing when I was young. My father taught me how to sail. And so in my teenage years, I started getting involved in teaching other people how to sail. And there's outdoor centers in Ireland where you can learn to climb and go caving and caving and canoeing and sailing and all of these amazing activities. And so I got involved in those, but the people who were teaching, the instructors, were also passionate about the environment. They were all really interested in environmental education and how we get people interested in the environment and protecting the beautiful countryside and all of the creatures in it. So that was an early inspiration. And then when I was 15, so I grew up in this farmhouse in the west of Ireland on the top of a windy hill. And every year, this migrant bird called the corncrake would arrive from Africa. And the males would sing all night long to attract the females. And the Latin name for the corncrake is crex crex, because during the night, they sing crex, 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 like this, and it goes on and on all night long. And they are ground nesting birds. They nest on the ground. And the females come and they mate and they have their young and so on. When I was 15, the neighboring farmer started using silage making, which is like a big industrial grass cutting machine. And within 2 years, the corncrakes were extinct. So, I mean, the farmer actually laughed about hoovering them up. He said, "Oh, stupid birds, they should get out of the way." But these birds were unadapted to the human technology. And so this was a big epiphany for me, a big wake-up call, that a simple technology like grass cutting on a collision course with nature and nature losing, and me witnessing the extinction of a bird right on my doorstep, outside my window, and I no longer heard the crex crex all night long. And so that woke me up, and I was like, oh my goodness, if we just blithely wipe nature aside that easily, we're in big trouble. Because we rely on nature for everything. So that was my wake-up call that set me on this journey nearly 40 years ago of trying to make myself useful, of learning how to make change happen. And I did an environmental degree, undergraduate, And then I became a campaigner. I helped to make Antarctica a world park for 50 years in 1991. So that was another wake-up call. It's like, oh, a small group of people can really make a big difference if they just have a clear outcome that they want, and they're a bit clever about how they go about things. And then I moved to working with experts, helping them to communicate better. And I spent 15 years on the boundary between science and policy. So I worked with lots of the top universities in the UK and official organizations like the European Commission, the European Environment Agency. They were my first client as a self-employed person. And I also undertook a doctorate at the University of Sussex, which looked at how experts communicate and how they make themselves relevant to the big challenges of the day, global environmental change, and so on. So that sort of built up over 15 years. I got lots of experience in the media and in front of select committees in Parliament and briefing government ministers and so on. And then a friend of mine asked me, are you coaching these experts? Is that what you're doing? So I thought, oh, yes, probably I am. So I trained as a coach. And so my work then transformed more into leadership work, helping leaders who are making big change happen. And one of the things that I did with my colleague was to write this book. So this is the little book of making big change happen. And that tries to make accessible ideas about how people successfully do make big change happen. So it's all part of my passion of helping people to do their best work. So that was my journey, really. And I've spent 18 years as a coach to top leaders. And I've worked with some really amazing people around the world in Africa and Asia and North America, as well as Europe. And so when I discovered the Global Rewilding Alliance, I wrote to them and I said, look, I support people like you who are making big change happen. How can I help? And in the end, they ended up recruiting me as a co-director. So I'm 3 days a week. I'm director for communications and outreach at the Global Rewilding Alliance. So that's sort of a bit of my story. Along the way, I've done other things as well. Like I set up a small group of in the university pension fund. It's a huge pension fund. It's now worth about £80 billion. We set up a campaign group at the end of the 1990s to persuade them to adopt a responsible investment policy. And we achieved that in 3 years. So I brought together a bunch of professors who are members of the scheme, and we persuaded the executive to adopt that responsible investment policy. And that set a big precedent in the city of London. So now there's, huge talk about ESG and in responsible investment policy right across the City of London. And that was one of the first big organizations that did that and were influential in that movement. So I've always looked for opportunities to sort of like, what's the biggest lever I can pull, to make the biggest difference. And that's given me a lot of enjoyment, a lot of satisfaction and meaning and purpose. And also a huge amount of learning, because when you try to make big change happen, it challenges you to learn a lot and to sort of like think clearly. So, yeah.
Excellent. And when you are describing your childhood along with nature, I can really imagine the picture. And it's also great to know that there is a waking up call for you. And so, which brings me thinking about the reason why we want to do this meeting. And I frequently write some blogs on nature conservation. The reason why we are doing this is actually because I hope maybe many of our audience will see some future from our conversation, and there will be another waking up call for many of them. Yeah.
Great.
So
well, Yes, we can never see, like, I always think of a duck on the water, and it's going along and it's making these little waves behind it. And the waves are traveling out and they eventually they hit the shore. And like I always think human beings are like a duck, you know. We're sending out these waves behind us. We can't see them because they're there. We can't see
Yeah.
how we are affecting other people. But I like the idea that potentially this conversation can, you know, help hundreds or thousands of people to think slightly differently about life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, as you already mentioned, rewilding. So let's begin with rewilding,
Mm,
and a concept that I know that you are passionate about.
mm.
It's also a concept that closely resonates with the ancient Chinese wisdom of Tao Te Ching, and it's so actually the concept is partly similar with the wisdom of 道法自然. Part of the meaning is following the ways of nature, and it's from Tao Te Ching. And
Yes.
so my first question will be, could you give a brief overview of rewilding and what potential do you see in this concept for addressing climate and biodiversity?
Okay. So the first thing to say is that we rely on nature for everything. Most people, they don't think about that most of the time. But nature gives us everything. It gives us air. You think this planet would be uninhabitable without trees and green plants creating oxygen. So it's just the first principle. So nature gives us clean air, gives us clean water. It protects us from storms and floods. When we strip nature out, it's no wonder that many countries are experiencing flooding because we have removed most of the nature that holds the water in the landscape. Nature also helps prevent drought and fire. So if you look at most of the forest fires around the world, um, they are in forests that are made up of non-native trees, pines and eucalyptus and so on. In countries like Portugal and Spain, most of the forests that are burning are non-native forests. And so, you know, why are those forests there? It's because we've removed the natural forests and replaced them with other forests that we think are going to make us more money. So I just want to start by saying, you know, nature provides us with everything. The whole basis of human existence is based on a thriving natural world that you could call it Gaia. You know, this idea of Gaia is this self-regulating planet which makes life livable. And most of us are sort of like we're too small and sort of innocent to realize this huge reliance that we have on nature. So rewilding is founded on the idea that in many parts of the world we have reduced nature to these tiny pockets. You know, we call them nature reserves or national parks. And in many parts of the countryside and in the ocean, we have removed nature for our own benefit because we want to have animals or we want to eat the nature or we want to cut down the trees to make houses or whatever. And the nature conservation movement has been trying to protect these last remaining areas of wild nature. But these areas are smaller and smaller all the time. And what we realized like 20 years ago when the word rewilding was first coined was that this is not going to be good enough, that you cannot have little islands of nature and expect that to be enough, that we need nature to recover, we need to help nature to recover, we need to have bigger areas of wild nature, and we need to connect those areas up with corridors. So rewilding is this idea that whereas ecological restoration takes an area and says, what was here 20 years ago, and we'll try and create it back just exactly like that was. Rewilding says, well, what if we just let nature lead the process and we don't predict the outcome? We say, well, we'll help it be as wild as possible and we'll reintroduce some species that have maybe been removed and then we'll let nature take her own course. And what we find is that when we give nature space, very often she recovers incredibly quickly and she surprises us. So when we give space for nature, species will reappear that we thought were extinct or locally extinct. So for example, very close to me here in the south of England, there is an area called the Knepp Estate where they've been rewilding for 20 years. And a couple of years ago, a species of butterfly that was declared extinct in England, it was quite a few years ago, this butterfly just suddenly reappeared. And there it is. So this is the surprise that can happen in rewilding. And then there's a third component as well, which is that sometimes bits of nature that we've removed will never get there unless we help. And so this is where species reintroduction comes in. And so, you know, all around the world, rewilders are reintroducing species into landscapes that have gone missing with amazing effects on those landscapes. There's a lot more that I can say, Nan, about the climate impacts of this and so on, but you may want to ask a question.
Yeah, exactly. I really like the idea that you mentioned. Nature's always inspire us,
Yeah.
surprise us. Yeah, always give us some idea, like how we are going to move on. And so my question is actually um, is like in your view, what are the three biggest differences between rewilding and traditional nature conservation? Because so when I first know this concept of rewilding, after I learned from your presentation at UCL, and I wrote a blog that you already know, and many Chinese audience, they just not criticize, but they wonder. Um, we've been doing nature restoration for many years.
Yeah.
Then you bring this new idea of rewilding. So
Yeah.
how can you see the differences between rewilding and traditional nature conservation, nature restoration? Yeah.
Okay. So nature conservation has been trying to protect these remaining areas of nature. Ecological restoration is trying to restore nature to a particular state that you have in mind. So maybe you have a state like 30 years ago or 50 years ago when there were certain species there and it looked a certain way. Whereas rewilding has been described, the difference has been described by Kane Blythe and Paul Jepson in their book Rewilding. They say that while nature conservation and ecological restoration are human-led and nature-assisted, rewilding is nature-led and human-assisted. So we flip the thing over on its head. So, for example, I'll give you an example of a difference. These days, with climate change, people sort of think, oh, I want to do something to offset my emissions. The first thing that comes to mind for most people is I'll plant a tree. Okay. Now, there are now projects all around the world planting huge numbers of trees, generally in straight lines, closely together, and quite often non-native species. Okay, now, okay, that's going to absorb some carbon, but our research indicates that if instead you allowed nature to recover, if you allowed natural forests to recover, you would create a much more resilient forest, a much richer forest for nature, and a much more fireproof forest. So, for example, in landscapes where there has been huge tree planting, it would be good to ask people, I wonder what it would be like here if we just allowed the natural forest to recover. And very often that will happen quite quickly, but it will be very different from a restored landscape where you've planted millions of trees. So that gives you kind of one example. Does that answer your question?
Yes, exactly. And then you bring the example is really happened around the world.
Yes.
Planting monoculture trees and one single tree species, and without considering biodiversity, it's really, I have to say, disaster. So, so moving to the context
Can
of
I just
China.
can I just can I just
Yeah,
say one
sure,
thing, Nan?
sure.
Like, I know in China there have been these huge restoration projects. A wonderful film made by John D. Liu about the regreening. You know, it's like the huge green belt and the big sort of areas that have become desertified, where millions of trees have been planted, and they've done amazing terracing and so on. And lots of people are now moving back into that landscape because it's a rich landscape and there's successful agriculture, and communities have come back and so on. Now, I'm not critical of that. I think that's brilliant, and there will be benefits for nature, but you're creating a human landscape. It's a landscape where humans are curating the landscape, and yes, you're preventing a lot of flooding and soil erosion and wind erosion and so on, but it's not a natural landscape. So I think building on that success, the Chinese state and the Chinese people really know how to do things incredibly well. I mean, when you put your minds to it, you know what the Chinese can't achieve is incredible. So I think then maybe the next stage is to think about, oh, what would it be like to have some areas where we allow nature to recover? And the reason I say this is because, and you may want to ask about this later, um, China has this declared ambition to create a huge system of national parks, the biggest in the world by 2035. And what I would love to see in that is what if we allow nature to lead the process in those natural national parks, and we bring back any missing species. So if there are missing, like, big grazing animals or big predators like big cats that have gone missing from those landscapes, what would it be like to, yes, we would need to help to bring them back. But that's a very different vision from the more curated landscape that has been in those other projects.
Yes, exactly. So you part of answer my next question. So my
Okay.
next question is that what opportunities and challenges do you see for promoting rewilding in China? And
Yeah.
are there any specific rewilding models that you think could fit China's unique environmental and social economic conditions?
Yes. So that's brilliant. So I've already mentioned the national parks, and what I would love to see is, I think in many parts of the world we've made the mistake around this concept of wilderness. So when the national parks were created in North America, Yellowstone and so on, the term wilderness was coined to evoke a pristine landscape with no humans in it. And so the humans who lived in that landscape were forcibly removed. And of course, it also goes with some of the history of the persecution of the first peoples in North America. So this was another excuse to move first peoples out of landscapes and create this tourist resource. It became then a commercial thing of people coming to places like Yellowstone and spending their money. But all of the people, like, nobody's allowed to live in a national park in North America. For us, that vision of wilderness is not our vision of rewilding. For us, a successful rewilding is also a repeopling. We've created this term repeopling of, we need people in the landscape. People understand the landscape, and we are part of nature, and we can live as part of nature. We just need to change the way we do some things. So I would love it if the Chinese system of national parks had people in those parks and create good livelihoods, good economies, and thriving communities in those national parks. I think that's possible. I think it's possible to live in harmony with nature like the Taoists would say, and so on. I'm a reader of Taoism, and Lao Tzu and so on. So I think this is possible. It's a different vision. So I think that's one huge opportunity that China has with the national parks. So another strand is about climate policy. And it's a little known fact that restored ecosystems generally draw down much more carbon. And we published a paper on this last year in Nature Climate Change, one of the world's top journals, where we convened the experts on 9 animal species, and we asked them, okay, what's the difference between an ecosystem with those species and an ecosystem without those species? So it's things like bison, wildebeest, in Africa, musk oxen in the Arctic, sea otters, gray wolf in the boreal forests. And we collected all of the scientific data on these. And in most cases, an ecosystem with those species, it absorbs twice the amount of carbon as without. And in some cases, up to 10 times more carbon is drawn down. So, for example, I'll tell you a story about the sea otters in America. They were completely wiped out, nearly completely wiped out by trapping for their fur, to the point where when ecologists arrived in California, they recorded sea otters as non-native because they didn't see any. Because they had all been trapped. Now, what's the effect of that? Sea otters eat sea urchins, these little creatures that the sea urchins eat kelp. Kelp is this huge, seaweed that grows in the ocean. So without the sea otters, there was no control on the sea urchin population. So they ate all of the kelp and the kelp forest disappeared. Now that the sea otters are coming back, they're controlling the sea urchin population and the sea kelp is recovering. And sea kelp can draw down carbon incredibly fast. In some places, it grows a meter in a day, in one day. So it can draw down carbon up to 20 times faster than a land-based forest. So now you can see how bringing back that one species, the sea otter, enables that recovering ecosystem to draw down huge amounts of carbon. And we've created this new field of scientific study called reanimating the carbon cycle, which is basically what happens to the carbon cycle when you bring back wild animals. And so this is the second huge thing that I think the Chinese government can do, is to think about how nature recovery can contribute to their climate goals under the Paris Agreement. And we now have, one of our partners has developed a series of 10 policy recommendations for how you can incorporate nature recovery into your NDCs, the so-called NDCs, the nationally determined contributions to the Paris Agreement. So that is huge. So in many cases, countries this can play a very significant part in their climate goals.
Yeah. You mentioned the excellent paper published in Nature Climate Change. It's really reminded of me when I read that paper, and I was thinking to translate some key points from that paper to our Chinese audience. I'll do that. I'll do that in
that would be great.
few weeks.
We have a policy briefing, a 2-page policy briefing, Nan, and if you want to help translate that would be amazing.
Yeah, that would be excellent. Send me.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
So my next question is about the NGOs who work in China, and it's a really hard question. I've been keeping thinking about this question for years, and I haven't got an answer. So many NGOs in China, they really face severe lack of funding.
Yeah.
especially when they are doing nature conservation. Recently many funding just get into directly to energy transition, to climate change. And so do you have any advice for them on overcoming these challenges?
Mm. So the bridge that we've tried to create in the first 4 years of the Global Rewilding Alliance is to show this link to the climate agenda, as I've just described. And I think, this potentially is a very long lever that rewilding organizations can pull, because they can show to funders and to policy people, both nationally and regionally, look, nature recovery can really help address the climate crisis and a whole load of other things like air pollution, flooding, drought. So what we're trying to do in the Alliance is to provide that evidence, which then local organizations can use to persuade funders to support nature recovery. So, yeah, I mean, I think that there are other aspects to this as well, which is that potentially rewilding organizations can benefit from carbon taxes. So I don't know what the state of carbon taxes is in China, but if there are companies and governments that want to offset their unavoidable carbon emissions, then they're much better off working with nature recovery than with tree planting. But the first instinct for many corporates is like, oh, we'll plant 1 million trees, or we'll plant 100,000 trees, because everybody can understand there's a tree, you plant it, it absorbs carbon. But our evidence is showing that actually backing nature recovery is not only better for nature, but it's better for all of these other things: flooding, fire, drought, clean air, clean water, as well as actually being more effective at drawing down carbon, sequestering carbon. So I think we're in this process where the rewilding movement is becoming more sophisticated at making these arguments. And there's a lot of work to do, but I think it's all to play for. And I think, we need brilliant minds like you, Nan, and all of your network to help work on this and to bring these insights into the thousands of decision-making contexts every day that exist in local governments and companies and so on. So we need a huge sort of movement of communicators,
Yeah, it's a ideology change, actually. Totally. Yeah, I mean, you have to change radically from people's mind. Yeah.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think, it's a simple idea. The basic idea is very simple. Nature recovery is our best ally. It's our best nature-based solution that not only addresses one thing, but addresses like about six all at the same time, what I call a system catalyst. So,
Yeah.
we have systemic problems. You've had big flooding in China. You've had these big problems. We can't tackle these things one at a time. We have to tackle them systemically. And what I'm saying and what the rewilding movement is showing is that nature recovery as a system catalyst, it can address so many systems problems all at once.
Yeah, exactly. And I also hope our meeting, if many audience can see our meeting, there will be another waking up call for those donors or research institutes. So for the research institute, they can do more research to
Yes.
show the evidence to government how nature conservation, nature restoration can provide multiple benefits, as you mentioned. Yeah. Next part of the question will be really focused on the leadership and the experience that you have in sustainability area. So the first question will be, what role do you believe that leadership plays in the field of sustainability? And could you share some personal insights or lessons learned from
Yeah.
your leadership journey?
Yes, absolutely. So So in my view, leadership is absolutely crucial. So if you and anybody listening to this, just take a moment and think about a team that you've been in where you have felt really valued and like you're making a big difference. And then think about a team that you've been in where you haven't enjoyed it, you felt demotivated by the people around you, where you haven't felt like you've had the opportunity to learn or grow, where you felt maybe a bit squashed by other people. You think about the difference between those two experiences. And most of us have been around people who inspire us and make us feel great and get the best out of us, and where we learn and we achieve things. And we've also had experiences of being around people who are like demotivating and depressing and, you know, kill our energy and stop us doing things and so on. So you think about this is an exercise that was worth spending half an hour on, Nan. I recommend it to anybody listening to this podcast. Just spend half an hour. You take a piece of paper and put a line down the middle. On the one side, put all the good experiences, and on the other side, put the bad experiences. Okay. So you think about what the difference is between those two. Generally, it has something to do with leadership. The people who are leading those teams, how they treat people, how they communicate, what their purpose is. This is leadership, okay? And essentially, what is leadership? Leadership is changing something. And human beings, why are we the dominant force on the planet? It's because we work together to change things. We know how to build cities. We know how to build technology. We know how to put people on the moon. You know, I mean, this is extraordinary. So the defining feature of human beings is cooperation. And a big part of that is about leadership. It's about how we get things done, how we change things. So what I always say, you know, and I teach this leadership program at UCL now, what I say is, you know, insights into leadership are available to you at every moment. When you're around other people, you just notice who inspires me, who gets stuff done. And that's the essence of leadership. So, you know, you don't need to read huge numbers of books and so on. I mean, there are lots of good books on leadership, but my point is that we can all have insights into leadership at any time. And then there's this thing about, are leaders born or are they made? And I would say leaders are made. So some people are lucky early on in life that they're given opportunities and so on, but each one of us can make ourselves into a leader, into a better leader, by committing. And I would say there's a few key kind of components here. The first component is getting really clear about what your purpose is. And, you know, being a human is not just about putting bread on the table or rice on the table. You know, being human is much more. And we have a much more meaningful life if we have what I call a clear, inspiring, shared purpose beyond self. So these 6 words: clear, inspiring, shared, purpose beyond self. So why those 6 words? Clear, it needs to be clear. You can't just say, oh, I love biodiversity. That's fine. But like, well, okay, what? What about it? You need to be clear. You need to be specific. What's my intention here in helping nature to recover? Okay, so you might be really interested in river otters or beavers or bison or big cats. Okay, brilliant. Now you're getting clearer. Okay, now what's your role in that? Are you a big cat scientist? Are you a communicator? Are you a policy person? So narrowing it down, getting clear. So it has to be inspiring. It has to be something that's going to get you out of bed in the morning and drive you to do hard stuff. Because when we're trying to change things, it's challenging. So we need it to be inspiring. We need this purpose that we're talking about to engage our emotions, get our heart moving, and yeah. So that's inspiring, but it's not just inspiring for us, it's also inspiring for other people. So it's shared, because you're never going to create big change on your own. You need a group, you need a tribe, you need, it doesn't have to be a huge number of people, but the more people you can inspire, the more change that you can create. So clear, inspiring, shared, and then what I call a purpose beyond self, which is, this is not just about me getting promotion or me getting more money or whatever, those like material definitions of success. A purpose beyond self is something noble, something big that's more than about you. It's about creating something that you'll be proud of when you're 80 or 90 years old. You look back on your life and you say, there, I helped to make the world a better place. I helped to restore a whole landscape. I helped to stabilize the global climate. I helped to prevent flooding in my community. I helped to create new livelihoods in this area of China or wherever you are. So purpose beyond self, I think, is incredibly important, because actually most people are not really motivated by selfish things beyond a certain point. I think there's a minority that are, but the great majority of people want to be part of something bigger, want to contribute to a better society. And that's what a purpose beyond self is. So it's a bit like the Japanese concept of ikigai. It's an overlap between these 4 circles. So things that you're good at, things that you're passionate about, things that the world needs, and things that you can make a bit of money at. You can make your living. So this ikigai is the overlap of those 4 circles. And I thoroughly recommend that people spend some time thinking about their ikigai.
Yeah, excellent. And I feel lucky that I have already completed those exercise in your leadership program. And I'm also looking forward to our February our
Yes.
next workshop.
Great.
So for those young peoples, younger generations, they're pursuing careers in sustainability. So what advice would you offer to them? And how can they prepare themselves to become more effective leaders in the future?
Yeah. Okay. Very good. So I have 3 bits of advice for young people on careers. Firstly, commit to a purpose beyond self. We've just discussed that. Secondly, be around the best people you can. And it doesn't matter where they are. They might be in private sector, they might be in NGO, they might be in government, but get close to the best people you can find. Like, these are inspiring people. They're people who will motivate and support you, the people who believe in you and back you and help you to progress as a person. And we find these people everywhere. So there's no rule as to which sector is better. In many cases, I found a lot of really brilliant people in the private sector. So yes, they're making money, they've got a profit motive, but these are, some of the best people I've come across, some of the best leadership I've seen is in the private sector. Why? Because they know that if they can have this purpose beyond self, if they can inspire their team and create a really great culture where everybody works together, then they're going to make more money and they're going to have, success. So I don't think there's any kind of like sector rule as to where you're going to find your best people, but just find good people and then get as close to them as you can, because they're going to help you. And then thirdly, I would say join a growth industry. So don't join the coal industry. I mean, it's going to die. It's hard to see that it's going to die, but it is. It is going to die. Solar, wind, and batteries is going to kill the coal industry. So don't join the coal industry if you can avoid it. On the other hand, if you are in the coal industry, there's a lot that you can do still to help with sustainability. There's a lot of work everywhere in the economy. There are niches for sustainability people to bring their wisdom and bring their insight. So I think those are my 3 bits of advice. Have a purpose beyond self, So, for example, if you join the solar industry or you join the EV revolution, the electric vehicle revolution, every morning you get up and you go to work, even if you have a bad day, you can still say, okay, I'm trying, I'm putting my energy, my time, my precious time I spent today helping the growth of the electric vehicle revolution, or the battery revolution, or the wind revolution, or the solar revolution, or the nature recovery revolution. So even if you have a bad day, you've got your purpose beyond self. And then, also I've spent my day around really good people. And yes, we're having a tough day or a tough week or a tough year, but I'm spending my time with really good people, and that makes me feel good. They support me through the tough times as well as the good times. And then, I'm in a growth industry. Wow, brilliant. I'm joining something that is going somewhere, and where, because it's growing, I'm growing too.
Yeah, I really like the idea of having purpose beyond yourself. And for example, my personal feeling is that um, recent years I have been really recognize what my purpose is, and every time I feel um, I don't want to do anything, I feel disappointed. I will so there is a sound that will ask myself, how can you do probably a small little thing for the earth? And because I only live a short term of my life, only decades years of my life. So how can I make a small change?
Yeah.
Like if there is, even if there is uh, only several people listen to our conversation, or several people read my blogs, there is a success. Yeah.
Yes.
So I
And
really, yeah, sorry.
yeah. And no, it's not. So it's a really inspiring thought. So you're planting the seed, and to begin with, it comes up that far. The next year it'll grow that far, and then the next year, and then who knows, the branches, and then the birds come in the branches, and then they bring seeds, and then it's before long you plant, you've planted a forest. So I truly believe, like, I started out, I was this country boy from the west of Ireland. I didn't know how to make change happen. I taught myself, and I hung around other people who helped me to learn. But here I am, I'm an honorary professor at UCL, and I've helped to make Antarctica into a world park, and I've helped change a pension fund, and I've helped to, and I'm helping to build the global rewilding movement. But, all of that comes over time, when, exactly as you say, when you try something, you learn things. And then when you succeed, that gives you confidence, and you go, oh, maybe I'll try this thing over here now. And then some people want to join you because they say, well, I like what you did over there. So now what can we do over here? And then it grows. And then before you know it, you've
Yeah.
created an organization, or you've created a national movement, or you've created, people have started to join you because it's inspiring, and they want to be around success, and they want to be around purpose and meaning. And I just think human beings everywhere are the same. It doesn't matter if you're in America or China or South America or Russia. Human beings everywhere are the same. They want to be part of something bigger. They want to give. They want to, make life better. And sometimes we go off on a blind alley, but generally speaking, I truly believe, people want to be part of this.
Yeah, exactly. So my next question will be around the international cooperation or cross-sector cooperation.
Yeah.
It's really tricky, the situation you can see around the world, geopolitical issue, and yeah, many people are also talking about deglobalization will be the next new normal. And so how can you so can you give some advice, like how can we do can we promote the international collaboration or and cross-sector collaboration in this new normal, and specifically around the climate and biodiversity issues?
Mm. So I get that. I get the sort of the, there's probably an irony here, which is that people on the right of center, people who are extreme uh, on the right of the political spectrum, they oppose action on climate change. They dismiss climate change as a reality. And then climate change nevertheless is happening, and it's flooding and it's extreme weather and it's hitting communities hard. And those right-wing politicians are able to exploit that to their advantage. So, potentially, like, the reason why we're getting deglobalization, why we're getting right-wing governments voted in, is because of the effects of climate change, ironically. That people are they're having their livelihoods attacked, and so they're voting for right-wing politicians. But nevertheless, I truly believe that around the world there are millions, hundreds of millions of people who want to address climate change, who want to see nature recover, and who are finding ways to cooperate with each other. And this is certainly, this is a core part of what we do in the Global Rewilding Alliance. We are connecting people around the world so that they can learn from each other and work together and be stronger together. So we have these network effects where, working together as 225 organizations around the world, when we turn up at an international negotiation, we're strong. We're strong because we've got lots of examples of success. We've got lots of stories of how rewilding is preventing flooding and for example, street trees. When you get extreme heat, if you have street trees, it reduces the temperature by 10 degrees centigrade. This makes a huge difference to people's quality of life. I was in Senegal last year. Everywhere you go, they're planting street trees, and under every single big tree, there is a cafe or a mechanic underneath a car, or there's a little school group going on. People are sitting in the shade because it's 10 degrees cooler. It was like 35 degrees, and under the tree it's 25 degrees. Perfect. So I truly think that people are beginning to understand this, and that trend is just going to get stronger and stronger. And there's a saying in English which is, it's darkest just before the dawn. Sometimes in human history, terrible things have had to happen in order for people to wake up. And, it's generally after bad things have happened that we make social progress. So in the UK, which I know best, for example, like, women got the vote after the First World War. And social housing and the National Health Service, they were created after the First World War and after the Second World War. Because, people came back from the war, and it's like, well, we've all fought together to try and retain our freedoms. And now we need to look after each other. We need to look at, we need to give people free healthcare. And so these big things often happen. And I think that it seems to be a feature of human psychology that things need to get worse before they get better. And, I truly believe that we're close to the low point with nature, that people are now waking up and they're saying, oh, of course we want a world rich in nature, and where nature provides us with so many benefits as well as beauty. And I mean, for example, there are randomized double-blind controlled trials in hospitals where people who are in a bed that looks out on a concrete wall, they recover more slowly than people who look out the window from their bed on a green space. It's been unequivocally proven in science. They've tested the speed of recovery of people in these different. So if you look out the window on a green space, you feel better. Your body feels better. You don't have to even be outside. Nature provides us with that level of well-being. And I think people are waking up to this. And I truly think that we're very close to the bottom now, where people are going, no, this is enough. We need nature to recover, and we'll get back all of the benefits. So, the fact that our cities are flooding, 200 people died in Valencia, in Spain, from over 200 people from the recent floods. We've had floods in France, Germany, Italy, Britain. Nearly every European country has experienced extreme flooding. If you bring back beavers into those rivers, you won't get that flooding. And we've already got examples of that in the UK, where there's a town called Pickering, which flooded badly about 10 years ago. And they said, oh, we can put a concrete thing down through the middle of the town, put the river in a huge concrete channel. And they said, no, we're a tourist town. We don't want a huge concrete channel through our town. We'll do nature-based solutions. They got beavers in the rivers up on the hills, and a similar cloudburst happened, big rain event, no flooding. So people are waking up to these stories, I think. I don't know if that answers your question.
Exactly. So my last question is about it's more like a personal question, but if you look back at your career, what is the achievement that you are most proud of? And could you share some insights or learns from that experience provided you?
So, I mean, I've told you some of the stories of things that I've helped to change. And did I tell you about my book? So did I hold that up? So this is yeah. So this is the book that I wrote with a colleague. It's about how to make big change happen. So I've made various contributions, but Nan, the thing that I'm most proud of is not any of those. The thing I'm most proud of is that I kept going. And I've had plenty of times in my life when I felt discouraged, when I felt too small to make a difference, when I felt that the climb is too steep, when I felt not clever enough, that there's too much to learn, when I felt despair, but I've kept going. And I truly believe that if I can keep going, most people can keep going. And what you do by keeping going is you create learning and you create luck. And, these things, they just build up over time. So I always say, well, there's this lovely expression. Most people overestimate what they can achieve in the short run, but they underestimate what they can achieve in the long run. And I often think, if I look back on my career, like a lot of the big things that I've achieved have taken 7 years. There just seems to be a pattern where it's about 7 years to create something, build a business, or succeed in a campaign or whatever. Now, so each one of those creates a success and a load of learning and new connections and friendships. And then and often they are overlapping. So there's like a 7 here and a 7 here and a 7 here. If you put all those 7s together, over time, they build up to being a lot. But what's the secret ingredient? The secret ingredient is being persistent. Just keeping going. Most success is 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration. So, it's that sweat that you're willing to put in. Yeah, you can have the best idea. Oh, I've got this brilliant idea. Great, congratulations. And it's an idea. It counts for nothing until you go and make it happen. And it's the making it happen where you do all your best learning, create amazing connections, meet wonderful people, and change yourself. You change. I often think of like a blacksmith with an anvil. They've got the hot metal and they're hammering to make the horseshoe or whatever they're making. And, when you go out and you try to make change happen, you're on the anvil, you're shaping yourself into this different shape. You learn so much. And before you know it, 7 years, 10 years, 15 years have gone by. and you've become a different person. You've learned so many things that suddenly you're more useful. And then, lo and behold, the universe trusts you with a bigger project because it says, oh, you succeeded in that. Now you're ready for this. And you go up. And then you go up again. But my journey has been like, it's not a straight line. It's been like a wiggly line. But all the time following my heart and following where I believe I can make the biggest difference. And I truly think that that's a journey that anybody can follow. It takes a bit of courage, but persistence and courage and good people around you, you can do it. Well, thank you, Nan. You're an inspiration. And I just want to say to our Chinese audience that, any things that I've said, any suggestions that I've made for China are often offered in the utmost humility. I've never been to China. I know very little about Chinese culture or policy. So, all of the ideas that I've shared are just ideas. And, with the utmost respect for the Chinese people. So I appreciate that, the Chinese, there's so many brilliant things happening in China. You're leading the world on solar and wind and batteries and EVs and so much. So you really know how to do stuff. So I truly believe that if the Chinese people get behind nature recovery, then we will be halfway there, literally halfway there, because you're so influential globally. That thought really inspires me, and I just hope that this makes some small contribution to that. But I wanted to say about I offer all my thoughts with humility and respect.